Hey everyone, welcome to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vohra, and I'm so grateful to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring the journeys of incredible individuals, people who have faced adversity, found their purpose, and are now making an impact in their communities. But it's also about my journey. Over the years, I've faced my own obstacles, moments of doubt, and struggles with identity. Through it all, I found my purpose in giving back, creating a space where people can detach from the negative emotions and stigmas they may associate with their own stories, just like I did with mine. Here, we have real conversations about growth, resilience, and transformation. Whether you're searching for direction, striving for personal development, or simply looking for a place to feel seen and understood, this is for you. So if these conversations resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Now let's dive into today's episode. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. Whether you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts or watching on the official YouTube channel of the Finding Purpose podcast, thank you for being here. If you haven't yet, please make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us continue to grow this purpose-driven community. Last week's episode with Ashley Rodone was truly special. She opened up about growing up in Covington, Indiana, her evolving identity through pageants, marriage, and motherhood, and how faith continues to guide her work and her heart. If you missed that episode, go back and give it a listen. Today, I'm sitting down with someone who has dedicated her life to helping others unlock their potential. Terry Yoffe is an executive business and career coach with over 20 years of coaching experience and a 6-decade career that spans both corporate and entrepreneurial worlds. She brings a rare level of insight, wisdom, and perspective to every session because she's lived through the pressures, pivots, and high-stakes decisions her clients face every day. As a 3-time international business and communications coach, Terry has worked with leaders across the globe, from young professionals and rising stars to senior executives and C-suite leaders. She's particularly known for her work in global business relations, helping international clients navigate complex communication dynamics, cultural barriers, and leadership challenges. Her coaching isn't just about strategy, it's about transformation. Terry helps her clients dig deep to clarify their goals, challenge the narratives holding them back, and build the confidence to step into new levels of success. Her signature approach combines emotional intelligence, business acumen, and deep trust, creating space for her clients to move past fear and step into courage. This episode is rich with insight for anyone navigating leadership, career change, or the stories we all tell ourselves. Let's dive into this powerful conversation. Here's Terry Yoffe.
Well, hello, Adam. How are you? I have to say thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate it.
Listen, I had to have you on from the second I met you. And the more I learned about you, it just made sense because this podcast is all about purpose.
Right.
And not only have you navigated different transitions in your life and career to become grounded in purpose, you have helped so many people from a wide range of different industries and, just be grounded in their purpose. So what I really want to jump into first is your story. And, I know, some of it, but I think it'd be really important to kind of just start from the beginning because did you grow up in New York City?
So my story, which I have turned into my journey, I grew up in Queens, and I think if I were in a horse race, nobody would have ever bet on me. I was a stuttering, insecure, lack of confidence, introverted person that didn't do well in school, that never felt loved, that didn't know where I was going. My parents were older and they didn't really guide me. So my journey was to figure out how to move forward. And I think there was something in me, whether it was my soul, that pushed me. And what I realized was no matter what it took, I was going to become somebody different. And it took me many years through many, many challenges to figure out who I was behind all the masks. And it was that part of me that kept pushing me to go through whatever to become who I am today. It wasn't okay for me to be ordinary. There was that part of me that said, you can become extraordinary. And that's what I achieved.
I love that. What were some early challenges that you faced in that period of time?
Being very insecure. As I said, I did not do well in school. I somehow never fit in. I tried. And I remember in high school, I became part of the in crowd. And that was like, oh, great. I really loved it because I felt seen. I felt heard. And I was part of cool kids. But it was never me. And I moved into the city when I had the first chance I got.
Mm-hmm.
And what young people in the city did, they took houses in the Hamptons in the summer and ski houses in the winter. And even though I did all of that, I just never felt comfortable in my own skin. It took years of falling, of getting fired. The one thing I did do that was probably my lifesaver was I went into psychoanalysis 3 times a week for 7 years. That was what saved me.
Yeah.
And after going through the navigation of my own inner life, when I finished, I think I said, if I could do this, I could do anything.
It's funny because, obviously going into your psychological journey and really uncovering parts of your past that you may not even understand how they played such a pivotal role in how you reacted further down the road. That's the same thing for me, where it's peeling back the layer and going deep into, wow, like this event is really the root of so much destruction, whether it was mental or actual physical destruction that I caused, throughout my journey. When you began the psychotherapeutic journey, how old were you? And what were some major things that you were able to acknowledge that, as I just said, you never thought was really the root of certain issues?
I probably started when I moved into the city. So maybe I was in my late 20s. And certainly I had a confusion of male and female roles because my mother was the breadwinner and my mother wore the pants and my father was not really available. I mean, he was there sometimes, but he worked 2 jobs and hardly ever saw him. And that was one of the things I unraveled. And just figuring out how I could be sensitive and vulnerable without having it hurt me. Because I got hurt a lot as a kid.
Yeah. Did you have siblings?
Pardon?
Did you have siblings?
I have a sister.
Yeah.
She's younger.
Are you guys close?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And I love what you said there about figuring out, how not to let these things hurt me. It's funny when you come from a, unconventional. You mentioned your mother was a bread earner. So was she also a pivotal role model for you growing up?
In hindsight, yes, because she worked. And I think my sister and I both got a work ethic. And seeing how hard she worked. And yet, on Saturdays, we would go to the theater and lunch. She would take us out for the day. But, like everybody, we all have our masks. And in the beginning, I went into the fashion industry, which was a great place to hide. And as the years went on, I think my first job, real job, was at 40, was when I got into sales. And the woman that hired me didn't care that I had no sales experience. I told her, I have no sales experience. She says, but you have fashion experience. That was very pivotal because I could have said no. Who wants to be a failure? Instead, I said, oh, okay. And found out I was really good in sales. And I had a territory. And I took a territory from 600,000 to 1.4 million in 3 years. And then I left. And I went to Condé Nast, which was a big media company, and did very, very well in sales. I found out here was this insecure person that all of a sudden, even though I'm an introvert, I learned how to be an extrovert. And I did phenomenally well. And people liked me. They bought me.
Yeah.
Because they trusted me. And I left there and started my own rec company. So I was a hired gun, so to speak, until that changed, that landscape changed, and I had to figure out what was I going to do. And I decided to become a coach. Or coaching found me. We found each other. Because what fascinated me was the human mind. Having worked on my own, everyone's is the same. It's just a piece of machinery. And we talk about finding your purpose. That was my purpose. And it took me a while to figure that out. And in retrospect, I was always, always helping people.
Yeah.
Always. Even though I wouldn't have assigned the word helping, I was just there for people.
Yeah.
I was always sensitive to people. And of course, being a coach for 22 years, not only did I get a certificate, I went for a 6-month certification program. So I'm always pushing myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just used to doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you said, a little bit there when you said they bought me. And I want to talk about being a career woman during that period of time. And what was that like? And obviously you fought, I think watching your mother being the bread earner made it a natural transition for you to jump into the workforce. And you know, I think it's also super powerful that you said you got your first real job really at the age of 40. And that in itself is super powerful, because nowadays you see so many folks just really figuring it out, trying to figure it out, and feeling like they need to be locked into this role or career, but they're truly unhappy. You know, what do you say was the guiding light behind you finally picking that career and taking that leap into the sales world? And what advice do you give to people who have been kind of bouncing around?
I think sales picked me because the woman that hired me, she knew of me from the fashion world.
Mm.
And
How long were you in the fashion world?
Maybe 15 years or
15
more.
years, yeah.
And in many different areas in the fashion world. But the thing was, here's this introvert getting up and doing fashion shows and being in the public eye. I mean, I've been in the public eye my whole life.
But the ironic thing is, when you mentioned the fashion world, you said it was a great place to hide.
Because,
can you elaborate on that? Because you
yes,
just said you're also in the spotlight.
Because when I was younger, I was really attractive. And I dressed the part, and I could be the part, and I fit in. I'd go to fashion shows, you know, everything was kind of fake.
Yeah.
And you could hide there. Nobody knew, nobody cared. I did my job. So getting into sales, it's a whole different ballgame. I was a natural. You know, the way I look at things is when a platform comes your way, you either step onto the platform or you don't. And I did. A platform is fleeting. It's saying you're ready to do this if you want to grow and change.
Yeah.
If you don't, platform goes away. And what I've realized, even though I wasn't aware of it, what I see today, so many people refuse to get out of their comfort zones without knowing. They would rather stay in it and not grow, or somebody like me, which is, oh, that's a new platform. Sure, I'll get on it. I'll say yes. And I think getting onto all these different platforms and not thinking about it was where my growth and my transformations took place.
Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely when you're talking about comfort zones, people would rather be in a position of safety. And it's also because the people who are surrounding them, who love them the most, are advising them to stay in a position of safety as well. Particularly in my story, my dad has always advocated for the safer role. You know, join a company, get the insurance, get the 401k, work there for 50 years, just like he did. For me, I always just listened to that for quite a while until I finally was like, I'm not happy though.
Right.
And I took a leap and jumped into a very, very, very uncomfortable situation when it comes to just having to learn everything and having to actually make mistakes and take some L's and navigate it though the way that I want to. Because at the end of the day, the people who love you are always going to project their own insecurities and their own fears onto you. And it comes from a good place, but it's not always what's going to make you happy. So embracing discomfort for me was a huge part of just getting to another level, and for me, that's also allowed my mindset to completely shift, where I'm a very different person than who I was, say, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Obviously, that's also related to my recovery journey and whatnot as well. But I'm talking also the way I navigate professional relationships and in that sense too.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's what I say. Good for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we live our parents' dreams and life. It's not ours, it's theirs. I never followed societal norms. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm 82. And okay, so what? I'm in, ageism reversed. I started a podcast. I'm in my 4th year, 4 years ago. And I made a commitment to myself that whatever happens, I'm okay. Who knew? But I said, it's not going to define me. I'm in my 4th year, and I'm in the top 2% globally with listen notes, about to go to 1.5. And I've been shocked as anybody
That's awesome.
that it's happened. So, as I said, I've never followed societal norms. I've just said yes.
It's funny. I mean, you mentioned your age, and having the experience that you do have and the perspective that years of just living and pushing back against societal norms and charting your own path. What are some observations that you could make when you see, whether it's clients that you work with or whether it's just people you see in passing, where you wish you could just shake them and tell them what?
Well, clients I do.
Yeah.
That's my job.
Mhm.
And people that want to retire at 65, that's great. Everyone should do what they want to do. And yes, I wish I could shake people and say, you could do so much more, but that's not for me to do.
Mhm.
My clients pay me to do that, to help them. And I do. I'm very tough because they've come to me because they want to do things. They want to make changes. And I think we have these assumptions and limiting beliefs that we've had forever that we don't understand aren't truths. They're just what we observed at a very young age. And I do not know how I made that leap.
Can you elaborate on that? We don't understand truth, just what we observe from a young age.
Meaning, hypothetically, you're young, you're 5, you're 6, you're 4, your parents get divorced. A lot of kids will say, my fault. That's a limiting belief because it wasn't your fault, but that's what they will go on to believing. And that will stop them in many areas. Well, if I caused that, I must not be good enough. I must not be worthy. My father was never around, ever. I think somewhere I believed he wasn't around because we weren't good. My mother was a very hard worker, but she grew up in a family of narcissists.
Mm.
Try overcoming that when everyone is tall and beautiful and I'm short. I look at that and thought, oh my goodness. So we ingest all of these thoughts and they stay with us. And as we grow up, we apply them.
It's funny because you mentioned your home situation, and I obviously had different roles in my home where my father was growing up. He was a career guy. He worked for IBM for 40 years, and he traveled a lot early on, and then he eventually would transform into working from home, but very much like the bread earner. And my mother was the homemaker, and while she had a career in early childhood education, she very much was the caregiver and the homemaker. Seeing my father the way that he parented was very different than the way my mom was, where she was more of the nurturer. He was more of the disciplinarian. I would say that, I clashed mostly with my father, and my mom would just kind of swoop in and protect us when there were times of, argument. I reacted very differently to the way that I was raised than my sister. This was also highlighted by a major revelation when we were 13 that we were adopted, learning that on our own. And the reactions to that were very different, where I, rebelled. She kind of became very much more introverted and guarded. And it's just striking how much our reactions contrasted to that revelation. If you can, maybe, I always think siblings are a good barometer in comparison to reactions. And I know you did allude that you may not, you don't have you and your sister don't have that great of a relationship, but based on observation, how was her reaction in contrast to your reaction to your mother's and father's dynamic?
Well, we have a relationship and I love her.
Yeah.
We just don't see each other that often.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
My sister got married very young, so she got out of the house.
Okay.
And she got divorced at some point. I was in a relationship and was supposed to get married, and he broke it off. When I held on to him because I didn't think anyone else would love me, it was heartbreaking. However, I should have realized back then what I did is I took the money and I went to Europe for the summer.
You're so funny.
I should have realized that there was something different about me, whereas most people, women, girls, would have cried and gone to pieces. I went to Europe for the summer, came home, we saw each other. I then moved into the city. A friend of mine had an apartment, and I remember her calling me and saying, by the way, my roommate left before she even finished. I said, I'm there. I'm coming. And I went out and went into the city. Never looked back.
I love that. That's cool. I mean, it's funny because some of the work that I've done in therapeutic sessions has really been about facing those moments. And there was one specific session that was a major turning point for me where the therapist I was working with we went through a role play, and she was like, be 12-year-old Adam and talk to your parents as to what you wish you said in that moment that you didn't say. And there was a bunch of things that I said that were direct, and there was some anger, and it was one of the most therapeutic role plays I've ever had. It was administered by Dr. Tion Dayton, who I actually had on this podcast and who specializes in sociometric training. And talk about how crucial it is for us to face these moments in our life, and I always call them turning points,
Mm-hmm.
because if I'm being completely honest with myself, it's very important. It was very important for me to clearly identify the major turning points in where my behavior shifted dramatically, or the way I thought shifted dramatically.
Right.
And in that moment, trust, I didn't trust in anything. In that moment, anger became the kindle
Mm-hmm.
inside my soul that fueled everything. And shame of always feeling less than, because, hey, why wasn't I told this earlier? Why wasn't this something you were proud of? Why wasn't this something that was celebrated? And obviously I've done that work.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times it was rooted in the expectation that the person who, quote unquote, caused it owes you. And talk to me a little bit about that and the process that you went through, with just understanding your family dynamic and transforming it into a mode of fuel that now empowers you to help others.
At some point, you have to put the mantle down and stop blaming your parents, and realize your parents did the best they could with the tools they had, which were probably very little, given my family, how they were brought up. They had no tools of nurturing, really understanding it, and what the end result could be from a father that was never around, a mother that was somewhat domineering, and realizing I had given up my power to my mother, and figuring out how to take it back. And all the years of analysis. And while I was going through analysis, I also started a spiritual journey. So I worked on my mind and my soul.
I love that.
And when my mother got sick, I took care of her. I was the person that she got dementia. It was awful for years. And as I said in therapy, because it was when the Twin Towers fell, I was in analysis that day. And, your parents are like these structures, these powerful individuals. And then they crumble because you're seeing them in a different light.
Yeah.
And if you want to move forward and you want to grow and you want to change and you want to transform, you can't hold on to that.
Yeah.
You do have to let go. And look, I don't talk to my clients or people and say, you're going to do my journey, because most people wouldn't do my journey.
Yeah.
But if you feel that there's something in you that you want to express, do it. Don't let your dreams or your goals fall on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Because at my age, I'm still growing. I'm starting a speaker school because I want to get on a stage.
So exciting.
And if I can impart anything, it's live your life. I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
If you want to do a cooking course, do it. If you want to do this, don't say, oh, I'm too old.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that I've had a couple of native New Yorkers on this show, and they love their city, and it's their home. They treasure it. And I always like to ask what your 9/11 story is, because I always look at that as a major turning point when it comes to be a native New Yorker.
First of all, I did not have the radio on. I did not have the TV on. I actually called my client because I was going there to see them.
Mm.
And I got on the phone and they said, "Have you seen the news?" I said, "No." A plane hit the World Trade Center. Oh, I turned the news on. And of course, then the second plane hit. And I had therapy that day. I got on the bus to go cross town, and you saw the people walking in like droves, like dazed. By the time I got to my therapist's office, he had been in therapy sessions. He didn't even know. And while I was in the office, the towers had collapsed. And it was craziness in the city. People were stunned. They were walking around. Where's my husband? Where's this? Where's that? I mean, I could hardly get in touch with my husband, who does go to the World Trade Center to eat. He was luckily not there. And I went down there that Saturday. It was a Tuesday. I went down there that Saturday because I had to be there. It was like a war zone. It was like a war zone. I could almost hear the cries from the people that died when you saw the people jumping out of the windows. It was a long recovery, at least for me,
Yeah.
to see what was going on. And certainly at that point, if people weren't doing what they wanted to do, that should have been a sign that who knows where we're going to be tomorrow. Why put it off? I mean, I have 50, 60, 45-year-old clients that got let go and feel like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you how many times I got let go. I couldn't afford to have a pity party.
Hmm.
I had to make money to pay my rent. I wasn't married at the time. So, and one other thing is we wait to ask permission. Oh, do you think I could do this? Or do you think I could do that? And what, like, your father, he worked in a company for all those years. He didn't ask permission. Gee, maybe I want to do something else.
Yeah.
Stop asking permission. Just do it.
I love that. That should be your motto. That should be my motto. That should be everybody's motto.
Just do it, We're
I mean,
on
I
this
think a
earth.
lot of people just put these barriers in their own head.
That's right.
And they feel like they need permission to, start a business, or they feel like they need a business to learn a new skill. They feel like they need permission. And it really comes from the quest for outside validation and the fear of being judged. I think that's the root of why people choose not to take leaps. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
Yeah.
they look, you're right. They look for outside validation, which is great. We all want that. But it has to come from you,
Yeah.
not from others, because you will be extremely disappointed if you're waiting for that.
Well, it's funny because sometimes I'm like that, where I have a posting schedule for the podcast, and sometimes I feel like I'm just bombarding people with me, but consistency also is something that I've come to understand is the key. And I have learned that by watching other successful people. They are consistent in their habits. They are consistent in everything that they do, whether it's their workout, whether it's their work day, whether it's the way they allocate the time, everything, whether it's in their messaging, which is also super important. Like the people who I've observed that are the most successful, consistency is truly the ingredient that has gotten them to where they are. How do you help your clients embrace consistency as a guiding factor?
I'll take one example of somebody that comes to me because they don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to ask for a promotion. They don't know how to ask for more money. And in the coaching, they have to do field work or homework. They have to start advocating for themselves. They have to start by reaching out. Maybe it's something small to start, so they get used to it. And we go through, okay, what if you advocate for yourself and you don't get the promotion? So what? Or you don't get the raise? So what? But you have to be consistent in what you do day after day after day after day. It's get up, dress up, and show up every single day. And I did that in my work. It still follows through. And if you can be consistent, or at least learn to be, might take you some time. Start small so you feel like a win and not like a failure.
Yeah.
If it's, okay, I've got to go get up and I'll do 10 minutes of workout. Okay, that's good. Start there. Or I have to get up earlier. Okay, get up a half hour earlier and work your way backwards. But consistency, you're right. It's about being consistent. It's about commitment.
Yeah. It's so funny that you talk about the workout, and this is a micro example of that where, I was working out very rigorously for quite a while, and it came to a point where I was experiencing this lower back pain, and I had maybe hurt myself. And then I was telling a friend about it, and he was like, you should probably go to a chiropractor and just get it checked out. So I go to this chiropractor, and the chiropractor is like, okay, so yes, there's significant work that needs to be done, and me and you could work together. Obviously it was the bi-weekly adjustments that he incorporated, but there was also a workout and stretch program that he put me on, and then another instrument that he had me use. And he was like, listen, in order for you to be able to heal, you need to do this consistently and work on it. And for me, that was just like such a cool experience, because over the past 6 weeks, I was able to really just hone in on this and understand that, all right, it's okay to also check back a little bit and get back to where I need to be, which is another thing that, obviously I apply in every aspect, but then I put in the 6 weeks and I did the stretches consistently, and I made sure to, comply with everything that he told me. And then when we did our 6-week checkup, he did another scan, he did another x-ray, and he was like, I've never seen improvement like this so much, because a lot of people tell him, oh yeah, I'll do the stretches. Oh yeah, I'll do that. But he could tell. And he was like, I'm really impressed that you actually diligently put the work in. And I was like, my driving factor obviously was, I don't want to be in pain anymore. And I think sometimes, and I'll speak from my personal experience, so many of the moments of reckoning for me were the desire to no longer be in pain, the desire to no longer be in an unfortunate situation or feel bad about myself, like, and gotten that dark. Whether it was with a career, whether it was with my lifestyle, with the alcoholism, and obviously when it comes to my physical being, it's always like, it was always that. Now I understand that it's just consistently work on all these different things. And one of the things that you alluded to earlier was that you had also embarked on a spiritual journey. I want to talk about that, because spirituality is a huge part of my growth, but also just my peace.
What would you like to know?
Well, I'd like to know like how you initially came to the conclusion that feeding your spirit and incorporating a spiritual practice into your life yields so many gifts.
I started by doing TM, Transcendental Meditation. And I then started reading book after book after book. And I signed up, again, it must have been my soul doing this, to do a silent Buddhist retreat in the San Cristobal Mountains of New Mexico. Off I went. This New York sophisticate had all the luxuries to go who knows where and what was it going to be like. I slept on a slab on a bus in a sleeping bag. You went to the bathroom either out back or there was an outhouse for women. You could have one or two other people in the outhouse. And it was silent. They got you up at 4:30, and I was new, so I'd be sleeping while others were meditating. Everything was silent. And at night, you had the 3 gurus who were amazing. And it was such an experience that when I came home to my apartment, I was so happy to be there, and my, bathroom to myself. I had a choice. Either I could go back to living the way I did, or I could live a life of becoming. I chose a life of becoming. And when I left the retreat, I thought, gee, when I get much older, I want to do that. I want to go up to a mountain and spend my life just talking to people. Well, I've gotten to that age and older. And I guess the universe, I'm not
move into a
going
taller
to-
building.
Pardon?
Just move into a taller building.
I do. I live on the 24th floor.
There's your mountain.
Right, exactly. I go out on my terrace and I say, this is my mountain.
Oh, I love that.
And how I show up in the world and what I bring and talk to people is my way of getting a message across. So the universe had other ways of my presenting my spirituality. And I didn't meditate for a really long time. I've actually gone back to it now. I do it every morning. And sometimes later in the day, it just grounds me. And I try to live a life of showing up in kindness and working with clients and helping them step into their unknowns with courage and figuring out what's missing for them so they too can create their growth and their transformation.
What do you think has been the key to your longevity?
I cannot tell you. I am working with a coach, and I never told my age ever, because most people never even look at it at that. And she said, that's your superpower, is your age. She says, I talk about you all the time. When I have these clients that are in their 50s going, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. She says, let me tell you about somebody 82 years old and she's crushing it. So don't sit there and tell me that at 52 you can't do this and can't do that. I can't tell you what it is. My spirit. my willingness to keep going, my willingness to do a podcast, to do the speaker school this weekend, and be uncomfortable, because most of the people have already done the speaker school. They're doing it again. And my goal is to get on a stage. And I was on one years and years ago, so it's now refreshing and thinking about what I could say. And it's leveling up in every aspect of my life. I never let grass grow under my feet.
You know, one of the things that I think is so beautiful about what you do is you mentioned that your clients can range anywhere between the 40 to 60 or range. And I think it's beautiful that you help them chart a path for a new chapter in their life. And a lot of my mentors are that age, and I always gravitate to that generation of professionals, particularly in the space that I work at and the communities I work at, because they have the keys that I need to be successful, particularly when it comes to the communities I work in. But what does that mean to you when you're able to be that source of guidance for someone who looks at, say, the end of a corporate career as an ending and feels lost?
I'm not sure that there are really endings. There's just new beginnings or adjunct beginnings. Again, it's the platform. When you're ready for something different, of course, it's a metaphorical platform, something shows up that allows you to step onto a different stage and grow from that. That's the next growth spurt, if you will. And I've also had a couple of young clients. One, she was so lost. She was in her late 20s. She was so lost, she thought she was going to be a teacher. By the time we finished, she realized she wanted to go into the Foreign Service. And then went on to Tufts to take courses in Foreign Service. That was her passion, but she didn't even know it.
I love that you said that was her passion. Obviously, the podcast is, finding purpose. And, I want to, what's your perspective on purpose?
I think for everybody, purpose might have a different meaning. And it could be very personal. For me, my purpose is to be out there inspiring and helping others that are willing and do have the courage to find out what's next for them. And it does take courage to start to deep dive and to see what's holding you back. And when they start to see, oh, I can do this, or I can do something I never thought I could do, that's the reward. And that gives me great pleasure. That's my passion. Because most people say, you've had such a great career, you've done so much, why don't you retire? I get that. I said, because my greatest passion is paying it forward and helping others.
I get that too. I love that. Obviously being 82 years old, and we talked about 9/11. Were there, and I'm just curious, this is just my own personal curiosity, because I am a history buff, and I love history. And what moments in history that, or, over the past, 30, 40 years, did you experience that changed you?
That what?
That changed you? Or that you were just so proud to have been able to witness?
I think I was most proud of myself for going through analysis and sticking with it, which was not comfortable at all. Spending 7 years regurgitating, if you will, my life and coming out the other side, so to speak, and seeing, wow, this is who I was. This is what I had to shed to get here. And then the journey continued.
Yeah.
I did so many other things that I feel very grateful and very appreciative of myself.
Yeah.
For becoming who I am today. Because as I said, when we started, back in the day, nobody would ever have bet on me if I were a horse in a horse race.
Yeah. I also wanted to know, like, what moments in national world history that you were able to witness or be a part of and see that you were just like, this is so powerful, and it was either life-changing or you're just proud to have been able to witness? Sorry.
I think 9/11
9/11
for me was, it was a feeling that you just can't comprehend and you just can't even explain. And going down there to ground zero and seeing the rubble, I think was a life changer for me.
It's so funny because you as a New Yorker, I feel like you're not a typical New Yorker, but you're a New Yorker through and through, in the sense that like you're very like kind and gentle and polite. And I'm sorry to all my fellow New Yorkers, but like there's a certain aggression to a lot of the native New Yorkers that I'm friends with, and I love them. But it's refreshing.
Thank you. It's not my nature. I do stand up for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not a pushover anymore. And somebody knows when they've pushed too hard.
Yeah.
I'm very open. But I've learned to see things differently about people, about life, through my spiritual awakening, through my therapy. Everyone is just trying to grab a piece of their little acre, so to speak, and take a stand.
It's funny because this podcast is very much inspired by Jay Shetty. He's someone who I love. I love. And one thing that he always asks, and I'm going to steal this from him because I want to. But what was the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I think my husband, and I've been married for 42 years.
God bless you.
When I was working at Condé Nast, he kept telling me, why don't you leave, start your own business? Only when I was ready did I do that. I think that was the next journey for me, I wouldn't have done it if he didn't keep saying, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it.
What was the worst piece of advice that you've ever received? Shout out to Jay Shetty.
People saying to me, because I didn't get married till I was 40, saying to me, why don't you get married? Why don't you get married? Why don't you get married? Those were the worst pieces of advice anyone could have given me until I was ready to get married.
I love that. I feel like there are a lot of women in their 30s and, who aren't married who, get that a lot, probably from their own families. And that, I'm sure they love to hear that, one thing that I always ask everybody who's on my podcast is, what advice would you give to someone on that journey of finding purpose?
Finding purpose starts inside, not outside. And I think becoming self-aware of who you are, not what society puts on you or what your family puts on you, but who are you standing there without the labels, with nothing except you. What do you want to see for yourself? If you could, as I usually say, if you could wave a magic wand and have anything you want, what would that be? My journey was about finding myself. And that was the greatest thing I could have ever offered myself. And the more aware we are, the more we understand who we are, the more likely we can find our purpose.
I love that. I think that everything that you've shared is just so valuable. And I just love everything that I just love that we've become friends. And
I do too.
It's funny because one of the biggest gifts of this journey, when you maintain an open mind and you are just super ambitious and want to, one of the gifts, like when you maintain an open mind, is the people who you otherwise wouldn't have seen yourself collaborating with and connecting with, and how they enter your life and provide such value. And you're one of those people that I'm really, really grateful to have been able to connect with over the past, honestly, several months. But just the way that you carry yourself and the way that you seek connection and the message that you put out is something that I really gravitate towards too, and strive to emulate and learn from, because there's just so much value that you have added to my life and journey. So
thank you very much. And you're right. It's about connection, but it's about the right kind of connection.
Yeah.
Not needy connection.
Yeah.
So thank you, Adam.
Yeah, no, I thank you. And I'd love for you to be able to speak to my audience and talk about what you have going on, and how they can get in touch with you and anything you'd like to share about yourself so that they can connect with you.
Well, one of the nice things that I have is next week on my podcast, I have John Gordon. John Gordon is a 17-time bestseller. It has taken me a year and a half to get him onto my podcast. He's amazing. My podcast is Extraordinary Work, Conversations about Creating Change. And if you're someone that has listened to this conversation with Adam and you feel stuck or feel like you can use some guidance, please get in touch with me. And you can reach me at Terry, Terry, at trycoaching.com. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My website is trycoaching.com. I will say it needs a new face, and I will be doing that. So thank you very much.
Folks, thank you so much. Just so you know, John Gordon will be on her podcast for the week of May 18th. This
May
so
19th, 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay, because this is probably going to come out after he was on it.
Oh, okay.
So definitely go into Terry's podcast and you will see the John Gordon episode. I'm super grateful for everybody who has listened to this episode and everybody who has been along the journey since the beginning and has, come on and followed and left reviews and engaged and reached out to me. All of that matters. Your voice matters. And I'm super grateful for the connections that have been born from all of these powerful conversations that we have here at the Finding Purpose podcast. I definitely want to shout out my producer, Claudio Valenzuela at Kai Visions. He's the man behind the magic. If anybody is looking to do content in the New York metro area, I encourage you to hit me up or hit him up, and we can make that connection, set up a studio visit for you. Regardless, thank you so much. Check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the official channel of the Finding Purpose podcast on YouTube. And I am so grateful for you all, and we will catch you next time.